Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian he never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian...
Vardar, the Macedonian handball team, wins the EHF Champions League title, and all of Macedonia, and Macedonians everywhere, erupt with passion, pride, and genuine joy, proving once again that everything is downstream of culture. In this case, the cultural venue is sports, and Macedonians around the world have once again shown the world that they are proud Macedonians and proud of their country, the Republic of Macedonia. This was made abundantly clear after the championship game when Vardar captain Stojan Stojlov gave a statement for the press and ended it by stating that this was a great victory, quote, for us and my country, the Republic of Macedonia. We'll discuss all of this and probably not much more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the center of Tucson, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin and calling in from a soon-to-be crazily noisy and hectic Skopje, Republic of Macedonia.
Amen. Yes, we are recording this on Monday, June 3rd. So as we are recording this, the Vardar team is just landing at the Skopje airport and will be making its way to the Plostad. I think that's where the celebrations are going to be, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so are you? But you're not going to make it down there because you're recording this. So
we'll keep this short.
Yeah, we will. We'll be monitoring all this to find out what is happening on the Plostad with the team as they come in there. But I think again, what this points to, as I said in the opening monologue, there is that this is a cultural event. Everything is downstream of culture, including politics and everything else, and this is a rare opportunity for Macedonians to just get out and just celebrate being Macedonian, a Macedonian achievement, in this case being the champions for the handball team, and an opportunity for Macedonians to get out there and just celebrate being Macedonian, celebrate a genuine Macedonian victory. We've been following this, actually, so they defeated Barcelona on Saturday, I believe, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then Sunday, yesterday, they defeated the Hungarian team.
Yeah,
and so this is the second time that they are champions. They have the Champions League title, correct?
Yeah, the big one. The first one was in 2017, just as everything was collapsing around here, and this is now the second time.
Okay, so this is a real opportunity for Macedonians to take a great deal of genuine and legitimate pride in being Macedonian and in the achievement of a Macedonian team that faced a lot of hurdles, and we'll talk about that in a moment. All of the stuff that went on behind the scenes, actually it was kind of public as to what was going on with the team and payments and the owner and the opposition of the current government against the team. And yet they have shown the world that Macedonia can make and achieve great things. And I think that's why Macedonians are out on the Plostad celebrating in Skopje and then throughout Macedonia and, frankly, around the world. Since you're there, why don't you kind of give us an example or take us through what's going on with the team there in Macedonia?
Well, everybody's at the square now. They're waiting for the team to land. They should be landing any minute in Skopje's Alexander the Great Airport, recently renamed by Zaev. And then there's going to be like a slow procession from the airport to the downtown using these open-air buses we have around the capital, and hundreds of cars are expected to follow them across the city. I mean, initially they drive on the highway and then through the eastern burbs of the city until they make it to the Triumphal Gate, Macedonia Gate, the square.
And this is
So this is the welcoming ceremony, which was pioneered for the basketball team in 2011, when they were fourth in Europe, which is also a BFD. it was ticker tape parade, it was songs, it was everybody was out there. It was maddening, and then I mean, listen, we're starved for sports success as a nation. Our football team is, the best thing they can brag about is tying England twice, or I don't know, tying Italy recently, stuff like that. I mean, it's not the best performing sports team we have there. We have one women's handball championship back in the day with Komatal Georgia Petrov, but that has been in the 90s, I think.
Right.
And since then, practically nothing, very little to show for. So the basketball team, of course, was a huge thing.
Right.
When they beat Lithuania, they were even with Russia twice. It was incredible. It was and then the team which Sergei Samsonenko, the Russian businessman who operates a lot of construction here, some betting, the Russia hotel. He was supposed to build the 2 hotels in downtown Skopje, but he's being slowly expelled from the country by the Zaev regime. So he put together this team. He opened up all the floodgates for funding for the team. There's one major Macedonian player in the team, Stoyan Stoilov, this huge pivot with this contagious smile and temperament, and the rest is solid, excellent players from Brazil, from Croatia, Serbia. It's but they're all completely interlinked now with the city and with the mood of Macedonia and the Skopjaners. So they click perfectly. They're essentially heroes in the country, adopted Macedonians, obviously, and they just they pick you up. You couldn't have a better team to represent the nation at this point.
Well, and to your point about the players from different countries and things like that, of course, that's common in the sports world, especially in European sports, basketball, handball, etc., to have players from other countries come in and join your team, and so that's no issue. The fact that the owner is a Russian, well, in our globalized world, that's the way it works. Money, comes in and goes into various countries from every place, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I think it is interesting, again, going back to the issue of culture, and here we are, we're talking about culture in the sports realm, and just a few weeks ago, Tamara was competing in the Eurovision Song Contest and did very well, did respectable, I think came in 8th overall. But I think it's fascinating to see how the government of Macedonia put so much effort behind her because she was happy to say, the N-word and to call the country something it isn't. Whereas Stoyanche said, again, I love that quote, "For us and for my country, the Republic of Macedonia." He is a proud Macedonian. He wants to talk about Macedonia and the Republic of Macedonia. And the government is... I was trying to find a few of the tweets from Zaev and Stevo, and I don't think Nikola Dimitrov said anything, at least yet.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't.
This.
Yeah, Pendarovsky was trying to put on like a brave face that he is actually rooting with the team, but you can just go through the replies to his comments. It's all people telling him to get bent. And Zaev, I think, used Makedonsky. So he insists that this is allowed under the Prespa Treaty, but not Macedonia. But the adjective, not the name of the country. But I mean, Stoyanche was from the start completely against the name change. Politics shouldn't mix with sports normally, but this is so intrusive, so present everywhere, so you just can't get around it. And he became an icon of sorts for the Macedonian everyman and for Macedonians who resent the name change. He would post an occasional comment in this line. Whenever he would play, he would insist we're Macedonia, and this all leading up to the major moment at the press conference yesterday when I suppose somebody said the team comes from the Republic of North Macedonia, and Stoyanche looks at him, if looks could kill, in his fashion, this giant of a man. He says, "My country, the Republic of Macedonia." And you can imagine what effect this had on the thousands who were already at the square celebrating. They were singing songs about Stoyanche all night long. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I see you talking about some of the reaction. The British ambassador to Macedonia, Rachel Galloway, last night tweeted, quote, "The streets are going wild for Vardar in Skopje tonight," unquote. Of course, I had to point out to her, and I'm sure others did. I don't know if she was ratioed or not, but it wasn't just in Skopje. It was throughout Macedonia and everywhere Macedonians live around the world. But she couldn't bring herself to say Macedonia, of course. I saw some of the other ambassadors. The Dutch ambassador used the Macedonian flag emoji and trying to get around these things and whatnot. But the level of enthusiasm for this win by Vardar from the government of Macedonia, from the foreign embassies, the Western embassies in Macedonia, and from all of our friends on the left, the colorful revolutionaries, etc., has been very muted, I think, as opposed to their support and enthusiasm for Tamara in the Eurovision Song Contest. So you mentioned, Cvetin, that politics and sports shouldn't mix, and I completely agree with you. I can't remember if you were here in the States when we had the NFL started getting more political with taking a knee and things like that. So. Yeah, and the cable television channel that covers most sports here, ESPN, which stands for the Entertainment, Sports and Political Network. Actually, it doesn't, but it might as well, because they just they've been going total political over the past years, covering various political controversies in sports, and it's fascinating because viewership is declining because people don't want to have politics in sports. They want to go and watch their team and cheer them on and celebrate with them when they win and console them when they lose. And in the case of Macedonia, it's not just it is a team that's from Skopje originally, but it represents all of Macedonia, and it gives great pride to the Macedonians wherever they live. And yet we've got people, as we've just been discussing, that really want to put a political spin on it and talk about where they don't want to talk about it, actually. They're not, or they're trying to talk about it in very delicate ways so that they don't step on anybody's toes or anything like that. So that's unfortunate. But why don't you tell some of our listeners, because they may not know about the kind of the story of Vardar and its background and whatnot. I noticed it was started in 1961.
Vardar is essentially best known for the football team, which started back, I think, shortly after the Second World War, a few years afterwards, and it's actually itself a continuation of the famous Macedonia football club from before the war, and from the war period, but more on this in my farmer's pick a little down the road. And it's synonymous with Macedonia, with Macedonian sports and national pride, because it would play in the Yugoslav League. I mean, the football team, essentially. The handball team was not so visible before Samsonenko arrived, to be honest. But the football team was essentially the embodiment of Macedonian spirit, especially when Darko Pančev and Ilija Najdovski showed up on the scene. I'm from this period, and they were. They won the championship once in Yugoslavia. They were quickly picked up by Crvena Zvezda, the main Belgrade-based Yugoslav team, and then went on to win the Champions League in Europe. I mean, in football, which was an enormous deal for us. And one of the things, it's since those times, it was also considered a cultural thing between Macedonians and Macedonians who embraced and endorsed this more Yugoslav identity, the South Slavic identity, which was being poured from up above in Belgrade. So you would have people define themselves: do you root for Vardar? Mm-hmm. And by extension, are you a Macedonian true and true? Or do you root maybe in football for Crvena Zvezda or Partizan? In which case you would be seen as more Yugoslav. It was a big issue in the state television. Milenko, he was famously fired from the television or demoted or something because he would be more into Vardar than into the Belgrade teams, and this was a major dividing line between the to the left and the right in Macedonia. And, this is the fissure we see even now with this when Zaev, as you said, is trying to impose the North Macedonian identity onto the country. And they endorsed Tamara, who was giggly and happy to nod and smile and say, yes, North Macedonia. I mean, all she had to do was do what Stoyanche did and what countless performers, sportsmen, scientists who would participate, who would represent Macedonia in international fora before her, they all did the same thing. We would be told, you're Fyrom, and the response would always be, no, we are Macedonia. You would cover up the FYR part of if you have a name tag, or, you would get in their face to greater or lesser extent, depending how important you are to the event. If they can't have the event without you, and if you're a proper Macedonian born and raised, you would definitely get in the faces of the organizers and tell them, listen, I'm walking out unless you call me by my name. And
right.
This is everything that Tamara had to do, just once or twice nod and say, yes, Macedonia, or just use this adjective, which is now the cop-out, which Zaev is employing. It's North Macedonia, but we're Macedonians. She should have focused on this and had the formidable PR machine which was put around her to elevate this fact that, listen, here at this event, Tamara said, we are Macedonians. And,
Yep.
They could broadcast this back to Macedonia, and they would have generated much more support among the public, even among the voters who ultimately failed her.
I'm going to read a tweet from Mats Staffensen, the Swedish ambassador to Macedonia, from May 19 about Tamara. And then, so let me read this. He tweets, it was a close shot, and at Tamara Todevska from North Macedonia looked likely to win after the jury votes. She did a great job with her Proud. A beautiful song indeed. A great PR for her country, even if she didn't win, ! So that's what the Swedish ambassador, who's been very big on pushing the N-word, that's what he tweeted about Tamara. Now I'm going to read to you the tweet that he has put out about Vardar. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sitting down, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. There is no tweet. Yes, he hasn't said a bloody thing, and nor will he, of course, because it doesn't suit his purposes. It doesn't suit his agenda. It doesn't suit the agenda of the globalists and the elitists within the European Union that want to impose their views on the Macedonians.
Yeah, despicable as he is, he's actually even still better than his predecessor, who's Lars Vigund or something, whose picture I recently posted on Twitter, and
I couldn't unsee that.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I'll use it in the video portion of the podcast.
No, please don't. Yes, I'm not sure how Matt seems to. I think he's been there forever. It seems like I don't know when he's leaving. He can't leave soon enough, frankly.
Yeah, honestly.
Right,
but I mean, this is definitely buggering their plan to promote North Macedonia. This is a rebellion of sorts. I mean, somebody was half joking, and we're recording this before the actual celebration starts. But if the people decide to do so, or if Stoyanche invites them this evening, they could easily be in the, storm the government building and reclaim the name for real.
Now, we don't want to. We just want to make clear that we are not advocating storming any buildings tonight. But that's the mood in Macedonia right now as we record this is just people are on fire for Macedonia. But these, it's events like these, Cvetin, that will lead to changing the name back to what the Macedonians chose on September 8, 1991. I firmly believe that the name will be changed back in due course. And I'm not talking decades, I'm talking years. But it's because of events like these that they serve as a catalyst for bringing people together to say, you know what, this is worth fighting for. Macedonia is worth fighting for. And as proud Macedonians, we are just revved up and ready to go to do what needs to be done to right this wrong that has been forced upon Macedonia. And so while there isn't going to be any storming of buildings, this is one of those events where it brings Macedonians together and reminds Macedonians of why they're fighting, why they're making sacrifices, and why this is all worth it. And that's what I hope comes out of this victory.
Yeah, you can't have this type of raw emotion. I mean, we were driving yesterday with everybody around Skopje with cars honking. You can't have this type of raw emotion for an artificial project like the EU or an even more artificial project like North Macedonia.
Right.
They will never generate any kind of emotion or support in the public.
You're absolutely right, Cvetin. The artificial project, which is the European Union, or this forced new name, quote unquote, on Macedonia, the N-word. No enthusiasm for that. I'm going back. I'm looking right now at some of the tweets from the so-called colorful revolutionaries. Nothing. Crickets. Silence. They are not saying anything about Vardar, whereas they were all over supporting Tamara. And it's almost a shame because I'm sure they feel forced to support the name, quote unquote, and everything that goes with it, and they're probably repressing within themselves because look, they're human, okay. They grew up with Macedonia. They felt pride, I'm sure, although some probably weren't even born on September 8, 1991. I can think of some right off the bat that weren't born then, that were participants in the colorful revolution, so-called. But they must feel some pride for Macedonia, and yet they're probably forcing themselves to deny that in a way, which is going to create all kinds of psychological problems for them in the future. Granted, they probably already have psychological problems now, but it's gonna make it worse when they're trying to repress those true feelings that they have for Macedonia and adopt this quote unquote new name, or this belief that they are quote unquote European citizens, or worse yet, citizens of the world, which means a citizen of nowhere. But that's what, kind of taking a 30,000 foot, 10,000 meter perspective right now. That is what the European project people are facing. As we are recording this, Donald Trump is in the UK. And why do you laugh?
I just remembered his tweets this morning.
Oh, okay.
And the hairstyle and everything.
Well, the funny thing was, I was watching some of the news channels this morning at the gym, and they were talking about today is the pomp and circumstance. He met with the Queen. He went to Westminster, etc. Tomorrow there's a state dinner tonight. Tomorrow, Tuesday, is the political day when he meets with the leaders of Brexit, the Tories, etc. I doubt Jeremy Corbyn will be meeting with him.
No.
But tomorrow is the protest day, so. The mayor of Londonistan, Sadiq Khan, has made is very vocal in his opposition to the president even setting foot in the United Kingdom. But the funny thing was, the news channels were pointing out how the protesters are having to be bussed in from around the country, and they're probably being paid, no doubt, by George Soros and others like him to go and protest, much as we see with a lot of the protesters in Macedonia that have. During the colorful revolution, they were bussed in and they were paid and whatnot, but they just weren't I'm sure they weren't enthusiastic about the whole thing. They had to be paid and they had to be bussed in because you cannot generate that genuine pride that comes with something that comes from below, that bubbles up from below, the organic belief that is your identity. It's not something that's forced from the top, which is what the European Union is, and which is what the so-called quote-unquote North Macedonia is.
Yeah, if you parrot these talking points which are fed from above, you would get your USAID grant, you would get your government job at this point, you would get, to work in a media outlet funded by the government or supported by the government. This is one angle which these type of people are now pursuing, and the other is obviously we had this experience before, we had these people before. They were rooting for Crvena Zvezda and Partizan in the past. They would declare themselves Yugoslav during the census and not Macedonians. Again, for a whole host of benefits they would get from the Yugoslav regime. And I suppose they grew up with this kind of thinking, and maybe their children, their grandchildren even at this point are feeling, reject the Macedonian state, and they're looking for a new identity there. This is not the first time they have tried to alter their own identity and the identity of those around them. They tried with Yugoslav, now they're trying with whatever currently European
citizens of the world. Yeah.
they would adopt anything, at this point. They're such null entities, and that's why they're resentful. But also, again, some of them are paid to do this. There has been a significant PR campaign around the victory. Some of the people on the left would try to promote, try to wave the Vardar flag, try to say we are with Vardar. Some of them, like the Helsinki Committee, they're reverting to another leftist communist tradition here, which is being a stool pigeon, reporting you to the authorities. They are having conveniently placed sources in the crowd which was celebrating yesterday who claimed they heard Vardar supporters chanting something about Albanians, and they now insist that they can get you arrested for this evening. So the police, actually, the Interior Ministry came out, they sent out a press release saying that if you're heard singing or chanting in a way which is hostile or hate speech, if they deem it as hate speech, they could throw the book at you. And they're doing this at the height of the celebration and the national euphoria. I mean, obviously in Europe, unlike in the US, sports is a proxy type of warfare between countries. And you can imagine each country, each nation has its songs about the neighboring country. In Macedonia, it would be Albanians about Macedonians, Macedonians about Albanians. There is one school of thought that it's much better to let the people have a let out than artificially trying to police their feelings, especially in a country which had war in 2001, an attack in Kumanovo in 2015, and the pressure to redefine Macedonia has been approved and supported by Albanian politicians in Macedonia and eventually by the Albanian voters. This is all cause for resentment. And there is one song which was an old, Second World War partisan song,
right.
But it's not a communist song. It's, again, a national song, a song for Macedonian national liberation. So you substitute fascists with Albanians in the song, and the left is having a meltdown. No, you can't do this. This is an insult for the Albanians. This is a pure revolutionary song, and they want to say communist revolution. But no, it's a song about Macedonians fighting for a Macedonian nation state. And obviously, you have to see it in the light of 2001 and Kumanovo in the name change. But then somebody came up with the proposal.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned some of the differences between the U.S. and Europe. Another one, of course, is the whole tradition of free speech. We're very much free speech advocates here in the United States, although free speech is under attack, especially on the campuses, whereas Europe is not so hot to trot on the idea of free speech. And that's unfortunate, because when you start cracking down on free speech, well, that's the first liberty to go, and then all the other liberties follow after that. Of course, as I've said many times on this podcast and in my writings, etc., there is no such thing as hate speech. And while I am not advocating saying whatever you want to say, look, we have rights and we have responsibilities as citizens of our respective countries. And there are things you should say and there are things you should not say. But in the heat of the moment, people say things. There are genuine racists out there in every country on the planet. They say things. But the cure for this type of speech is not arresting people or fining people or throwing people in jail. The cure for this is better speech in exposing people that do this thing, that engage in speech that some might find offensive. And that's the other thing, is that, there is no right not to be offended. I'm sorry. This is part of the thing called life. I get offended by things I see every day. Do I go out and report the offenders to the authorities or whatnot? Of course not. That's ridiculous. So the idea of the various groups you mentioned running around reporting on people is, yes, completely Orwellian. It's completely antithetical to the idea of free speech, which is completely antithetical to the idea of freedom. And you've got this government in Macedonia led by Zoran Zaev running around talking about how it is quote-unquote pro-Western. Well, you can't be pro-Western if you're cracking down on free speech. I'm sorry. Those two things just don't go together.
And, we police our own behalf. When somebody goes above the limits of decency and acceptability, the best approach is to have like-minded people who also come from the left or from the right, depending where this person belongs, and turning on him or her and warning him or her. I'm sounding like Monty Python by now. And But this is the best approach. We've done this. We're doing this, and the left going whole UDBA on us, the Yugoslav secret police on us. It's not helping. They're actually making it worse. People are getting even more agitated and reacting to their pressure on the expression of Macedonian national identity and this deliberate looking for going after one or two bad apples in a sea of people out there. And people are responding even more angrily and virulently when they see who is coming, who is doing this, what type of people are doing this, people who actually make their living out of going after people for hate speech, and in fact they're going after Zaev's political opponents and critics and trying to get them arrested. Somebody had this great proposal to just substitute Albanians or fascists in the song with Severjans, which is now the name for the supporters of the name Severna Macedonia. So, okay, let's see if they can try arrest somebody for mocking them as Northern Macedonians.
Well, that's clever. But again, I think it goes back. I mean, the whole here you have again. We have this celebration of a pivotal moment in Macedonia. Vardar wins the championship league. People are out there genuinely. They're celebrating with genuine pride and passion and joy. And then the government and its toadies in civil society, maybe the internationals, etc., want to try and turn this into a political event and actually go after people and have them arrested for freely speaking. I mean, again, that's not pro-Western. That's totalitarian, and that's a shame.
But they're very in a very difficult position. They literally tried to get Samsonenko kicked out of the country openly, and everybody knows it. While Vimera was still in charge, they tried to get it was a big thing for Zaev and his people to justify the open support he was receiving from the U.S. Embassy by saying that he is the pro-Western, pro-American option, which is ridiculous on its face, and that Vimera is the pro-Russian option, which is doubly ridiculous and surreal. And because there is no major Russian investment in Macedonia, no major Russian interests, he would point to Samsonenko, who has a couple of hotels, betting stores. I mean, it's a mid-sized business in the country, that he is the source of Russian influence in Macedonia. They would get media outlets who support Zaev to go after Samsonenko with articles, with investigative reports against him, post his picture alongside Gruevski. And then Zaev had this horrendous interview for BuzzFeed, which is hilariously part of the deep state, judging by their reporting, judging by what they wrote about Veles, and in this situation, I mean, it's a site which should be covering, polls, which Game of Thrones characters are you, and cat memes, and they're doing serious politics. It's hilarious.
Serious journalism, apparently.
Yeah. There is a great Onion comment on this, joke on this, that a BuzzFeed journalist was captured in Iraq, and he spent an hour trying to persuade ISIS that I'm an actual journalist, okay, go to the website, but ignore all the polls and all the girl, pop stuff, and just, somewhere down at the bottom there is serious reporting on BuzzFeed.com. So Zaev had this interview in which he accused Russian interests in Macedonia. Samsonenko was named not directly by Zaev, but I think later in the article, that they're trying to undermine his name referendum. So he is actually accusing Vardar's fans, the committee, the legendary football fan group from Macedonia, that they're working for Russia, that they're against the name change. In the process, he's actually building them up to high heaven, because everybody who is angry at the name change, which is every level-headed Macedonian, is now loving the committee because Zaev is choosing them as his political opponents. And he gave the interview several days after 3 Albanian thugs who belong in a violent group which called Shverceri, like they would say they're football fans. They're essentially a criminal gang in the Albanian district across the river, and they killed a young committee supporter, a guy of 20-something, in front of his girlfriend. They beat him to death. And Zaev is making this. Zaev's police allowed one of them, who is allegedly politically involved, to flee the country. They only arrested 2 of them. And everybody is outraged. And then several days after this murder, Zaev goes out and says, the committee are working to subvert the name change, to undermine our referendum. They're working for Russia. And everybody's, okay, I love the committee 3 times more after hearing this and reading this. And Zaev's PR machine is putting a picture of Samsonenko next to a picture of Gruevski, as if trying to damage either of them. And in fact, they're just building both of them up. So Gruevski had this response from Budapest. He says, well, listen, they tried to destroy Vardar, and now they have to bow before Vardar, and this is what they get. He said awkward, actually, in this turn of phrase. He said, well, must be awkward for them.
Oh. Well, this is all part of the quote-unquote approved narrative from the Western elites that have forced this name change on Macedonia together with their partners in the Macedonian government. The approved narrative, of course, is that Vomero and their supporters, and actually, frankly, any Macedonian who wants to keep the name of Macedonia and Macedonia's identity, language, heritage, culture, etc., if they want that, then that makes them pro-Russian, and of course, being pro-Russian, quote-unquote, is a very bad thing. Whereas Zoran Zaev and his ilk, who call each other comrades at party conferences, are the approved narrative pro-Westerners. Which, when you start peeling back the skin of the onion, the layers of the onion, you see that this is all a bunch of crap. It's not true. Going back to the referendum in September, let's see, it was Mogherini, Merkel, Mattis. I can keep coming up with M's here, probably, of people who came through demanding that Macedonia change its name.
Theresa May.
But May, right? Yeah. But Medvedev didn't come through. There were no Russians that actually came through, and yet it was the Russians that were the ones interfering. And that's just on the surface. We could talk about the stuff underlying, of course, but. Anyway, that's part of the approved narrative from the West, the Western elites that are demanding that Macedonia change and conform and give up its name and its history and everything else.
Yeah.
And that all feeds back into our discussion here about Vardar. So,
honestly, it all started in 2011 when the basketball team was, had this charmed run in Lithuania. I think was the championship, and. The entire country is enjoying a sensation it never felt before, which is we're winning at something in global sports. In a serious sport, it's basketball. Obviously handball is 1 degree below basketball, as basketball is 1 degree below football.
I'll take your word for that on that.
Yeah, European.
Okay.
European stuff. And all of a sudden, a bunch of people on the left, prominent people, like SDSM deputy party leader Gordon Georgiev, our friend Filip Stoyanovsky. People like this are in your face insisting that this is all nationalism. There are no Albanians in the team. That's awkward. They're singing a song, somebody is singing a song about Albanians. That's unacceptable. They were singing a song adopted from a Serbian fan song that the field of Solun will be ours again. And it's a joke. Nobody takes it seriously. They were dead serious about this, the left. They insisted that, look at the city. It has a triumphant gate. And we're saying, yes, we plan to use it in a few days when the guys come back. No, but this is like Leni Riefenstahl. This is like Hitler. This is like fascism. And we're like, okay, it just looks like any normal, regular European capital. And as any normal regular European country, we're winning at something. It's going to happen sometimes. It's statistically inevitable. Just relax, have a beer, enjoy it. Not a big deal. Everybody's doing it. Everybody has this slightly in your face at your neighbor when they're beating their neighbor. It's unavoidable. It's how we live here. No. And they
friendly competition.
Yeah, they
sometimes it gets a little out of hand, but
And if the U.S. were smart about this, and for a while they tried to be smart about this. You remember Phil Ricker? He was investing a lot in trying to show himself at Macedonian national handball team games, and that he's like supporting Macedonian, expression of Macedonian patriotism, etc. But then, he had this horrific Senate hearing where he had to denounce Macedonia. He had this. There was some Greek editor tasked to write negative stories about Macedonia on Wikipedia, and he had Phil Ricker's Wikipedia page. He wrote that the first item, the item Ricker is best known about, is supporting Macedonian nationalism for attending a handball game where the crowd was singing this song about the field of Solun. And obviously it was removed from his Wikipedia page because it's the stupidest thing you could put in and the least important about him. But this tells you how, the US tried at one point to try this as an outreach toward Macedonians. But then, was this the reason they gave up? I don't know. Probably it was never in Phil's heart anyway. He was probably faking it. Long story short, at this point, the only expression of patriotism and national spirit they would allow us to have is this feminist song, all-inclusive song at the Eurovision Song Contest. And they tell us, okay, how about if the girl says North Macedonia all the time? And we say, no. How about no?
Yeah, how about no? Does that work for you?
Yeah. Jesus. I mean, if the system is rotten like Yugoslavia was, Yugoslavia did collapse after a football game going badly. But it was piled on top of a bazillion other injustices for the Croats. In this case, it was Croats versus Serbs. And they said, the police came out trying to beat up Croatian football fans. And a Croatian football player, Zvonimir Boban, karate kicked a policeman. And this is considered the karate kick heard across the world or across Yugoslavia, and which ended Yugoslavia. We do not have such levels of injustices in Macedonia. If we are looking for this, we would much more, or at least just as likely, be able to find them Albanians doing injustices toward Macedonians than vice versa. So people were saying,
of course,
chill, relax, enjoy yourselves. But no, the left couldn't help themselves. They said they're going to boycott the welcoming reception at the square. Gruevski said, okay, fine. So in the end, they had to pick up several SDSM members, party members, after all this bad blood which they tried to ingest. I mean, nobody liked people trying to rain on your parade, especially when it's the first parade you had in your lifetime. And they had to escort several of them with the police, protecting them at the square because of all the horrible things they were saying. So they were there and they were forced to clap through these songs which they were criticizing before about the field of Solun, etc. And this evening is going to be the same thing. The mayor, Petra Shilegov, who is organizing the welcoming ceremony, he preemptively said that he will not attend so as not to steal the event politically. But, if he shows up, if he tries to say, the moment he says N out of the N word, he would be booed off stage, and even before that. So he's smart, he knows what's going to happen to him. Of course.
No, and Zaev won't show up either because he can't. It is not. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be fun to see what happens on the square tonight, and we'll save that analysis of that for our next podcast.
They're just now landing. They haven't. They just landed, and this is an hour after they were supposed to land in a very late schedule as it was. So because the city of Skopje paid for the direct charter flight, they could have very easily had this event tomorrow. Tomorrow is Ramazan Bayram, the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. It's a day off for everybody in the country. So kids are not in school, nobody's working. They could have just landed this evening around midnight, which was the original plan, have a parade, a small parade, and then have the major town square event tomorrow at noon or something. The weather is beautiful. I mean, it could have worked perfectly. But no, the city of Skopje, they decided to have the flight. They said initially it's going to be at 4. Everybody said, okay, fine, we have a late afternoon event. Then they said 6. Everybody said, okay, it's a bit late, still doable. Then they said 8:30, and everybody was like, okay, we know what you're doing. You want to postpone this after midnight so nobody shows up. And the people are still at the square, and nobody's going to leave. The team is going to arrive well past midnight, the way things are shaping up. And still everybody's going to be there, and it's going to be even more of a propaganda fail for the left. And
more of a party for those true Macedonians who believe in Macedonia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, why don't we do our farmers picks, and then we will pick this up on our regularly scheduled podcast. I should say that we were going to do a podcast yesterday, but we were literally overtaken by events. This is changing. The victory of Vardar is changing. Actually, my weekly column, I'm going to write about that this week as well. But why don't we take a brief break and come back with our farmers picks?
And welcome back to the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. This is Cvetin and Jason from the handball capital of the world, actually, Skopje, Macedonia. And we have Jason Miko from Tucson, Arizona. Jason, it's time for our farmers picks. What have you got for us?
My farmers picks was real in keeping with the whole theme of this podcast, this episode, I should say, and it's going to be a link to that quote from Stoyanche, the captain of Vardar, in which he said, quote, talking about the victory, he said, quote, for us and for my country, the Republic of Macedonia. And so I think we should put that quote and that link up there so that people can see that and take pride in that.
This is a great win for us and my country, the Republic of Macedonia. Thank you very much.
What's your farmer's pick?
Yeah, just have to say, somebody described Stoyanche once, one of the sportscasters, like, you wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley after midnight. And I would add, especially if you've been using the N-word around him. And before, the best statement he was known for before this was the fake Zeppelin. You know about this?
No.
This was hilarious. When they have these timeouts and the coaches, giving them tips and what to do in the remainder of the game, and everybody's chiming in with their suggestions. And there is this move in handball where you throw like a high ball toward the opposite end of the field, I guess, and one of your players is supposed to run in, capture it mid-flight, and slam it in the goal, and this is called the Zeppelin. And Stoyanche says, hey, coach, how about we do the fake Zeppelin thing? And everybody erupts in laughter. It was like, it was the best. It was vintage Stoyanche. This was magnificent.
Oh. That is great. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, my farmer's picks is telling us that we actually, in the Balkans, history does not proceed in regular fashion, in orderly fashion. It just repeats itself as a farce, as a parody. We're just living all the historic chapters at the same time, honestly. I'm going to use as a farmer's pick the third half, a movie about the football team in Macedonia, which I mentioned before. This was the pride of Macedonia at the time, the football team of Skopje, and it was the event was dramatized by Darko Mitevski, the director, in 2012, I think. We have the Macedonian team. They're supposed to play against the Bulgarian team, the royal team from Bulgaria. And Macedonia is newly conquered by the Bulgarian army in the Second World War, and they're told to take a dive. They're told to lose the game, and this actually happened. It's obviously dramatically enhanced in the movie, but they actually beat the Bulgarian team in Skopje, and it's set against the backdrop of the deportation of the Jews, the Holocaust of the Macedonian Jews here, and the coach of the team was Jewish, and he was taken by the Bulgarian army and put on the wagon, headed to Treblinka, but he managed to flee, come back to Skopje, dies of heart attack shortly after. In the movie, he's represented. I think he was dying while the Macedonian team was scoring the winning goal. So it's there are strong similarities. We're told to take a dive. We're told to shut up and submit to the orders of the European Union, the American diplomats here. All the neighboring countries are on board with what we're being told to do. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you have Vardar, which is the historic continuation of this football team and handball team in this case, coming out of nowhere and pissing on their project, and it's glorious.
That's good. I've seen a number of Macedonian films. I haven't seen that one yet, and I need to get that. So that's a good reminder. So we'll put that link up there. Well, I think we should offer our as the Macedonian Content Farmers, we should offer our congratulations to Vardar and Stoyanche and to all of his teammates and to the Macedonian people wherever they live for this fantastic win and being named the league champions.
Yeah, here.
Cvetin, great talking to you. We will take up the remainder of the fallout of all of this on our next podcast.
Yes. Take care, buddy.
Great talking to you. Yeah, you too.
You too. Bye.